All right, so we are back. Now, I wanted to get into sort of the main course of Race to Dinner and discuss the dialogue that takes place. Can you tell us sort of the range of experiences that you've had at these dinners? What is the typical dinner like? What does an exceptional night look like? And what does a nightmare of a dinner look like?
We've had all of those. So I'd say the normal is usually 1 to 2 women who are, it's very obvious
Mm-hmm.
out of the gate that they are really fragile and really defensive and ready to put their dukes up
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and they will kind of like go to blows with that person. And things have shifted. Early on, it was different. I mean, this was completely made up, totally spontaneous. Now that it's a little bit more systematized, and we have people who are working with us, and we have a little bit more of a formula. People are much more self-selecting. So I feel like now that what's happening is the other white women are kind of jumping in and saying, like, checking their friends,
Oh, interesting.
um, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Like, I want you to, I'm flagging that this, is coming across this way. That's the usual. And it's
Mm-hmm.
always very intense. I mean, like, I will say, like, this one was talking about work. Um, a woman at the last dinner was talking about how she was so desperate to have kids. She didn't even care that they were black when she adopted them. And all the white women were like, oh my gosh, whatever. And I was like, time out. That's racist,
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Mm-hmm.
really dangerous because these are your children and
That's
you
something
have
you have to consider.
yeah, I mean it really so they can't see, I mean they really, it's this constant, they are checking each other, but they're still white, they're still white women, and they're all so used to being in white solidarity. I mean, I'll say this, something that has hit me a lot is nobody is in greater solidarity than white people, you know
Oh, oh,
um
big time.
it really, the amount of, I'm talking to a couple of other journalists this week who are Asian, and the amount of getting raked over the coals that I've received by Asian people,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like, really, I'm the enemy, like, seriously, like, you're wasting your energy and your time dragging me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
White people don't do that to each other.
Yeah.
That's how they stay on top. um so the white solidarity is always there, but we're like trying to poke holes. That's like a regular dinner.
Mm-hmm.
I would
Mm-hmm.
say an exceptionally good dinner um, has been. I'll give you an example of one. It happened, I think, in the fall,
Mm-hmm.
and it was, doctors, lawyers, like wealthy-ish stay-at-home moms,
Mm-hmm.
and Regina and I were talking about how they don't see us as their equals, and they don't see our humanity, and they don't see our children as their equal to their kids. And in Regina's case, she was saying they don't see her grandchildren as equal, and they all were like, crossing their arms and not me, not me, not me. And this woman to my left, she was sitting directly to my left. She was quiet almost the whole dinner, and she just said out of the blue, she said, "You know what? You both are right." And she said, "I don't see you as my equals. I don't see
Wow.
your children as equal to my kids. And Regina, I don't see your grandkids as equal to my kids." And she said, "That's true." And it was, all the other women were like, right? And then within a few minutes, they all started agreeing with her. And they were like, "Oh my God, I
Wow.
can't believe you said it. You said it." And just like Regina's like, "I know Asians are racist, We were like, "We already know. We know. We're not trying to convince you of anything. What's important is for you to acknowledge, you already know. You actually know, but to acknowledge it to yourself and say it out loud in a group of peers, because then it becomes real." Um, and they've gone on, this group has gone on to having more and more and more conversations. And now certain members of that group get together like once every 2 weeks or every month to like check. They call themselves like checking Becky or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
they're literally checking each other. And
Wow.
that's amazing, right? A terrible dinner. Oh my God, there's a terrible dinner a while ago, where there's always the white woman who's like, "My best friend is Native American, or my best friend
Yeah.
is Chinese." my best friend is black. This
Mm-hmm.
one in particular, this white lady had a quote, two best friends from high school. One's black and one is Native American.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, they definitely don't think I'm racist. And Regina and I were like, they know you're racist. Like, they know. And then I said, and by the way, they probably talk about it with each other. It doesn't mean that they don't love you and they don't, like, you know, cherish you,
Mm-hmm.
but they absolutely know you're racist, and they've absolutely had conversations about it with each other. Holy shit. You would have thought that I asked her for a kidney. Like, she seriously went so crazy. She storms out of the room crying, screaming, whatever. And so, you know, one of the rules is if you cry, you have to leave. Well, so they leave, but you know, what do the other white women do? They're just sitting there, like, feeling so bad. They feel so bad for their friend. And so Regina and I are just sitting there, and the other women are just staring off, wanting to make sure that their friend, you know, feels okay. So she comes back, and she's still, like, you know, she's whimpering. And I was like, what you just did was extremely violent, right? So then all the other women, including the hyper woke women, were like, you're just being mean now. You're just being mean. Regina's like, how is this mean? Like, what? I'm literally just telling the truth. It went, so it was 2 hours of crying, screaming, all of them, until finally the host was like, okay, it's a timeout. Everybody needs to leave. And she literally, like, kicked everybody out of the house. And that was the end. And there's been no, I don't think, I mean, we've had no communication with them. I don't think that they're in communication with each other. And one woman had the audacity to say, she, like, got back in touch with over, like, Facebook Messenger, which I'm no longer in Facebook for a whole host of reasons, but she was like, I just want you to know that this is a reason why you're just making things worse, and you're just making white women more racist. This, like, and she was like, this made me, like, more racist. And I was like, wow. I don't even know what to say about that.
You know, and you were talking a little bit earlier about, you know, just this refusal to not just accept the fact that you are complicit in all this, but just, you know, a lack of awareness that you were part of this much larger system. You know, sort of in my experience, one of the things that happened to me when I was in college, I had watched a documentary by Chris Rock, I think. It's called Good Hair, and it was about the black hair industry. And they were talking about black hair, and they were talking about how black women are treated when it came to their hair. And there were so many of these issues that I had no idea about. I didn't know that black women had to endure so much pressure just to, you know, just living with their own natural hair. And I had written a blog, and I confessed, and I said, you know what? For the longest time, I thought, like, I thought that, you know, natural black hair was supposed to just be like, it wasn't pretty. It was supposed to be ugly or whatever. And I didn't know that I had that internalized racism and that anti-blackness. And it took a long time for me to really retrace my steps and figure out, like, how did this mentality happen to me? How did I, you know, fall into that? And it took a lot of work to, you know, rework that and understand that, you know, I don't have to be attached to that mentality and think that, oh, well, that's just how I feel. That's just who I am. Why are you getting mad at me? I had to look at it more as, this is a bad thing, but it doesn't define me. I don't have to be this person who is anti-black. I can choose to be better about that. And one of the reasons why I love your program so much is that, you know, there's no shortage of resources for people of color interested in learning about themselves and their racial identities. You know, you don't have to tweet that far to find communities on Twitter to educate you about this. But that's not the case with a lot of white communities. And I found that oftentimes people of color know more about whiteness than white people themselves.
Because white people,
because white people don't have to discuss or think or understand their own whiteness. Unfortunately, you know, that refusal to ask hard questions leads to being racist. And
Right.
as much as I'd like to, as much as we'd like to banish all racists to canceled island, the truth is, I've learned that sometimes canceling racists is a lot like recycling. You think that you're disposing of your trash in a healthy manner, but it's going to end up in someone else's landfill.
Well, it's whack-a-mole.
Oh, exactly. And
Yeah.
now, if racists aren't on Twitter or 4chan or Reddit, then they're going to be in your HR department, or they're going to be on your college campus. So this all leads to the question of, how do we go about tackling the monstrosity that is white supremacy? What do you think works, and what do you think doesn't work?
I mean, that's just a huge question, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm so at in the United States, we're at not even 1.0, we're at 0.001.
Mm-hmm.
Acknowledging that it exists, and as Regina always says, calling a thing, and like acknowledging that it exists. It's not in the water, it is the water.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, white supremacy is the only thing, it's the foundational principle of America. And because it is the water, nobody talks about it. There's
Mm-hmm.
no definition for it. I'll say I have internalized white supremacy, and white people are like, what does that even mean?
Mm-hmm.
It means that people of color, I'll give you an example of how people of color uphold white supremacy, because I used to be a great example of that. My first job out of law school, I clerked for a judge who was a complete nightmare, toxic white feminist. But after that, I worked at a law firm in New York City. Super liberal New York City, Manhattan. This was like, the law firm was like ground zero for diversity and inclusion, which is like code for racist, like this is how diversity and inclusion is just such a terrible thing. But anyway, I go to the first, it must have been 27, 28, and I was on the Upper East Side. These are all, Clinton lovers, and walk in, and it was mostly white lawyers. It was a white male partner at the law firm, and there was a handful of black lawyers, Latino lawyers, indigenous lawyers, Asian lawyers. Okay, but mostly super liberal white lawyers in Manhattan. I walk in, and this is the very first party I've been to at the law firm, and
Mm-hmm.
the guy, the partner, looks at me and he goes, "Oh my God, you're Indian." And I just freeze, and I said,
What?
"Yes." And he goes, "Snakes and elephants."
Are you kidding?
I was so stunned. And I look around, what power do I have? Right? Now we know what I would say. But at that time, I felt totally powerless. I had hundreds of thousands of student loan debt. The reason I was even at this law firm was to start paying that off in I'm still paying it off. And there's a split second where everyone's waiting, right? And what do you think I did? I started laughing. I made fun of myself. I made fun of my people. I made fun of my culture. And in that moment, I took a glass of champagne, and I remember a little stupid ass goat cheese canapé, and everybody else laughed too. And that's how we uphold white supremacy, right? Like, that's how we do it. And so that's it. It's everywhere. It's in every nook and in every cranny. So how do you get rid of it? This obsession with Donald Trump is so misguided.
Mm-hmm.
He is a mirror. He's a mirror of America. He is America. And white people's reaction, look, he is so dangerous. He's going to have us all killed, right? Having him for another term is a total disaster. But white people thinking that we get Donald Trump out and everything is fine.
Oh yeah.
When has everything been fine?
Mm-mm.
The
Mm-mm.
way, in my mind, is through conversations and honesty and transparency. And that is all Race to Dinner is little mini dinners with honesty and transparency. You tell the truth and you get killed. So that's how powerful white supremacy is. You tell the truth. I can only imagine how much hate mail you get, right? Like, you tell, like, the horrific comments, the DMs, whatever. You tell the truth and people come for you. So you're hitting Voldemort. You're hitting the power center when people come for you. When I ran for Congress a couple years back, I was told, and these are by all the progressives that you know and love, lots of people that you know and love, I need to stop talking about race and just make this a class conversation. Just talk about class. Just talk about class. Just talk about class. And I was like, of course, class is massive. But to say, I mean, like racism, you know, like Barack Obama famously couldn't get a taxi cab in New York City. Like it's class does not negate racism, and the fact that you can openly talk about class in this country and run on economic equity platforms as we should, but you can't do that with racism tells you all you need to know about racism and white supremacy in this country. That is the elephant in the room.
Yeah, and it really is stunning how, like you said, how many people see Donald Trump as, you know, the nucleus of racism, as if prior to him, you know, we didn't
Like
have that.
It. Like
yeah, yeah, and it's hard to explain to white people how present racism is in everything, in every industry, in every social media platform, everywhere. And it's again, I love the approach that you're taking about having these conversations and listening to these people's stories, because, you know, I'm not trying to say that, like, oh, I think all races can be reformed or anything like that, but I think that there is a breaking point. There is a point where you could find out where this is coming from, where this racist, you know, history comes from with each individual person, and you can sort of tackle that and at least sort of chip away at it. Now,
the devil's in the details, and in my mind, the details are white liberals. And passing the buck and kicking the can does nobody any good. Look at what you said about your own realization around your own anti-blackness and how you realize that vis-a-vis the context of Black women's hair. If we all keep saying it's somebody else, then nobody is taking accountability, right? We have to put a mirror up to ourselves, and that is all this is. I mean, the first thing that these women do always, it's their racist husband, it's their racist dad, it's their racist uncle, it's their racist colleague, it's their racist friend. It is so hard for them to say, it's me. It's actually me. And once you can dismantle it, start the process of dismantling it in yourself, you can then take your show on the road.
Exactly. You have to be able to accept it first in order to start actually working on it.
Yeah.
Now, slightly unrelated to race dinner, but related to Democratic white women. Let's say, for example, if you held a race to dinner event and you had Elizabeth Warren, Amy Klobuchar, and Hillary Clinton at dinner, what questions would you ask? What would you want to know?
The same exact thing. The same exact thing. Name the most, in their cases, name the most recent racist thing that you've done. And by the way, I'm an Elizabeth Warren supporter, recognizing how extremely problematic she is. You know, like it's recognizing that. But what I like about her is this recognition and this acknowledgement that she is not perfect, that she has fucked up royally. And I believe her. I might be incredibly wrong, and my belief might be very, and trust might be misplaced. But I believe her to continue showing up to listen and hearing from marginalized people. Hillary Clinton, I mean, like, she is, you know, ground zero for toxic white feminist. You know, she really is.
Oh,
Super
yeah.
predator. I mean, there's on and on and on. And Amy Klobuchar. I mean, I'll tell you a funny story. I know Amy, and I get a kick out of her sometimes. She wrote the foreword to a book that I had worked on, and a couple years ago, I was in her office, and I just said, I was like, I think you're going to run for president, you know, and I can tell you right now, a big issue that's going to hit you like a ton of bricks is how openly of a white feminist you are. She didn't even know what that meant. And I was like, okay, I'll give you an example. I've just looked through your social media, and it's a sea of white people, white. And she was like, well, I come from Minnesota. And I was like, there are lots of people of color.
Oh, yeah.
in Minneapolis and St. Paul alone. And then she said, which, I mean, you have to laugh at it. She goes, well, Syra, I just posted about Hidden Figures.
Oh,
Oh, God. Like, I don't even know. I don't even know where to
yeah,
begin.
she should.
You know?
You should have her over for
That's
dinner.
the thing. We're like not even at 1.0. We're at point, 0.0001. And so I think, I mean, sincerely, I think that I would love to have a race to dinner with them. I would love to have a race to dinner with Amy Schumer and Tina Fey and all of, like Gwyneth Paltrow. I mean, Gwyneth Paltrow is moving $75 vagina candles. And these white ladies are buying it. There's a wait list. Like, they have a culture, and they refuse to acknowledge that they have a culture, and their culture is toxic and just nuts. Like, they'll white women are lining up to spend $75 for a candle that smells like Gwyneth Paltrow's vagina. Like, that might be, when we look back at the end of the world, that might be like
that will be a chapter in history. Now, Sarah, oh my gosh, I had so much fun talking to you. I honestly would love to have you and Regina back. When you
gotta meet her. She's the much better half.
I know that when you're working on this new approach to this program, and I know that this thing is going to blow up even more. I truly, and I'm not even saying this because you're the guest on the show. I'd say this because I truly believe that what you are doing, there is a nugget of like, this is going to be the future of how we actually address racism on a much more profound level. As much as we can make films about representation and talk about all these different issues, unless we bring it to people, to their faces, and we confront them, not in a, hey, this is a safe environment and you can just, no one's bad here. Like, no, you have to actually bring the fight to them. I truly believe in
and nobody's bad. Like, that's the thing. Is
yeah.
Like, that's what's so problematic is, you're saying I'm a racist, that makes me bad. So it's just breaking down all of it and having the honest conversations. I appreciate. We'd love to come back. You let us know.
Definitely. Now, my last question that I have for you is, what are some of the new projects and ideas that you're working on, and where can our followers find you?
Yeah, great. So Race to Dinner, RACE2, the number 2, dinner.com. Can find us there. So again, like, the response this past week has been overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
We've gotten so much hate. We've gotten tons of love. We've gotten lots of requests for media, and lots of requests for dinners, and tons of Black and brown women around the country saying we want to do this too. So that's what Regina and I are working on right now, because we can't be everywhere. We can't even do even a fraction of the dinners that people want now.
Mm-hmm.
Is figuring out a way to scale and help women of color all around the country set up their own Race to Dinners, so we can start scaling the message.
Super excited. I am super excited. I know within, like, if I contact you all a year from now, it's going to be calling it now. It's going to blow. But
I hope
again,
so. I hope so. I'm seeing, for the first time in my life, at least, there is incremental change just in our tiny little communities, which means we're doing something right.
You're doing amazing work, Sarah. It was a pleasure to have you on, and we will definitely invite you back on the show.
Thanks. Take care.
All right, take care. Bye.
Bye.